Welcome to Meet Houston Missions and the Simmons and Fletcher Local Missions Podcast. I'm the host, Paul Cannon, managing partner over at Simmons and Fletcher. The podcast is about giving people an opportunity to find places where they can connect and volunteer, as well as giving local Houston area missions an opportunity to find those volunteers, donors, and other people that want to be a part of their mission. Today, I'm excited to bring on Krista Freihoff, who is the Executive Director of the Freedom Church Alliance. She's here and going to tell us a little bit about what they do and how they're involved. So without further ado, Krista, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about the Freedom Church Alliance, please.
So thank you. I thank you for letting me be on the podcast today. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I actually started out in missions as a missions pastor of a church for 7 years. And about the time that I stepped into that role was around the same time that Freedom Church Alliance birthed as a nonprofit, which has been about 14, almost 15 years ago now. And so even though I've only been on staff with Freedom Church Alliance for about 3.5 years, I've been involved with the mission since the very beginning. So as a missions pastor, they were a vital church partner with us. I relied very heavily on Freedom Church Alliance in my ministry role with missions. I oversaw city and global outreach. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of plates spinning with a job like that. And Freedom Church Alliance really helped me to kind of keep my ducks in a row when it came to anti-trafficking efforts, when it came to educating and equipping the church and helping me to mobilize the church into anti-trafficking opportunities. So they were a huge, huge resource for me as a missions pastor. And so I've now been a part of Freedom Church Alliance as a staff member, as I said, for about 3.5 years. And it's just that watching the mission grow and evolve. We have an alliance of 35 churches in the greater Houston area. So it's been really fun to see the growth from beginning to where we are today.
That is awesome. 35 churches just around the Houston area. And I understand y'all are now starting to grow, looking for opportunity to grow nationally, correct?
Yeah, if people have asked us, are you going to go national? And so I said, well, I guess it just depends on what you mean by national, because in some regards, we already are, I feel, mobilizing nationally. We have our Fight for Freedom book, which is our education and awareness book. We used to have what was called the Go Box, which was very Houston specific. And people would go through that Go Box, and it was an equipping toolbox, if you will, to help people engage in anti-trafficking efforts. And people found out about it and thought it was great and said, we really need something like this for our city. And so we created what's called the Fight for Freedom book. It's 6 chapters, and it's an all-encompassing educational tool and resource from a gospel perspective. So there's a lot of details and information in there about what is the church's role in this? How can we be praying? How is the church to be mobilized in this way? And then there's also, of course, just your standard educational pieces, voices from survivors, voices from anti-trafficking organizations, both domestically and internationally, law enforcement information and data. So we kind of are national, because I believe the book is now in about 28 different states. And then we have on our website what's called our state by state guide. So if somebody, say in Illinois, they're not in Texas, is reading that book, we have this state by state guide that they can go to and look up organizations in their state as a stepping stone to getting involved in anti-trafficking efforts. They are not organizations that we have fully vetted, but we have that disclaimer on our website to say, these are just a stepping stone for where you are. And then we also have just so many resources on our website that are applicable for anybody, anywhere to use. So in a sense, we are national. We only exist as an alliance per se in Houston. And what that means is that we've kind of become a hub or a bridge, a way to collaborate with churches, anti-trafficking organizations, trusted partners, law enforcement. We're all kind of working this synergy together in Houston. So the alliance in that regard is just specifically in Houston, but our reach, I would say, is national.
Wow. Okay. So, and you brought up that you have some tools on your website that are designed for, I guess, equipping and empowering the church to get out and, I guess, take action and be a part of the battle against human trafficking, correct?
Right. Yes. So primary tool that we use, like I said, is our Fight for Freedom book that you can order. And in that book, there are QR codes that connect you to videos that go to our website to help add further information to the chapters that you're reading, to go deeper into those topics. And then there's additional resources on there where we provide articles There's a couple sermons on there from pastors who've spoken from the pulpit about just sexual immorality in general and how that leads to pornography addiction and human trafficking. So lots of different resources that people could use, whether they're a leader in a church or they're just somebody that is in the community that's wanting to learn more and how to fight human trafficking.
Wow. Okay. And so I guess that we've kind of touched base on the foundation of the organization here. So let me ask the question, what is the church's role in fighting human trafficking from the perspective of the Freedom Church Alliance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our mission statement is uniting and equipping the church to fight human trafficking. And so, we all agree as a mission for us is that we are under the banner of Jesus. We started 14 plus years ago as a result of a missions pastor that was in Houston that recognized that Houston had a growing issue with human trafficking. And he said, sadly, there's not one person who can fix this. There's not one law enforcement agency that can fix it. There's not one church or one nonprofit. It's going to require the collective involvement and collaboration with all of us under the banner of Jesus because it is a darkness like no other. It's an
Um,
atrocity against mankind, right? We are all created in God's image. And so God's heart to protect the vulnerable is huge. We see it all throughout scripture. And so we believe that the church has a huge part in this. One, prayer. A lot of times we dismiss prayer as not taking action. It's the lazy way out and the way that you can sit at home and not be on the front lines. But prayer in and of itself is the most powerful weapon that we have against human trafficking because we aren't fighting against flesh and blood. In Ephesians 6, it tells us that we're fighting against spiritual darkness, right? So we have to pray against that. We have to pray to protect the vulnerable. So prayer is number one. Becoming aware and educated on the topic, I would say, is number two, because if you don't have awareness, you can't take effective action, right? It's one thing to have a good intention and to jump in and want to be helpful, but if you don't truly understand what you're fighting against, it's hard to know how to take effective action, effective being the key word. So I believe that the church's responsibility, as a leader of a church, the primary shepherd of that church is teaching what scripture says on all God's truth, right? And one of the messy things that they don't want to talk about oftentimes is sexual immorality because it's a very difficult, messy topic to discuss. But I do believe, we believe that that is part of the church's responsibility is to address that and to guide and to shepherd their congregation because we know through research that the church has just as much of a problem with pornography as common society that doesn't go to church. So that's an issue. So the church leadership has definitely got a responsibility to lead their congregation through the truth of those passages and not avoid them. And then I would say, lastly, to help them take action, that you have somebody who's overseeing the outreach and missions areas of your church that sees it as a priority to help them be engaged to fight against human trafficking. And part of that, which is sort of another number four here, but all goes together, is we talk about upstream ways to serve against human trafficking. And a lot of people don't know that until they get educated. It's not just going out and kicking down doors like we see in the movies. That's the law enforcement's job to do that. But upstream ways of serving could mean that you decide to go volunteer as a mentor at an underserved middle school that your church is partnered with. And you might be the only person in that child's life that is seeing the apps on their phone that they're engaging with, or hears the cry of their heart, or maybe they're in a neglectful or abusive home and they're very vulnerable to being trafficked, but that mentor could be engaged in such a way that helps them to guide them away from those vulnerabilities, or working as a volunteer in a crisis pregnancy center. There's so many overlaps with human trafficking. So just guiding, those individuals that are coming into those upstream ministry opportunities is a huge way that people can help that sometimes is overlooked.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the battle has to start before people even get into human trafficking. It
Right.
starts with education and awareness because nobody goes to their high school counselor and sits down and says, I want to be a trafficked prostitute when I grow up. It
Right.
doesn't happen that way. They are generally brought in by force or by desperation at some point out of need or necessity or force, and then they wind up stuck in a life they can't get out of. So
Exactly.
if you're gonna fight the battle, you have to start at the beginning and try and curb the supply, I guess, just as much as you're trying to curb the demand in these situations. But well,
Right.
that is awesome. So you guys are involved largely in equipping the church to get involved and support organizations that go out and do a lot of the human trafficking battle. I noticed when I was looking at your website, you list several of them in the Houston area that y'all are involved with: Scarlet Hope, Elijah Rising, Unbound Houston, Street Grace, the Joseph Project, Redeemed, Rescue America, Demand Disruption, and Refuge for Women. These are all organizations that you guys have gone through a vetting process of some sort to basically ensure that they are actually doing good work out there and being good stewards of the money that they receive when they receive donations in order to go help fight human trafficking, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So, like I said, we collaborate with a lot of different organizations, including law enforcement, but we have what's called a trusted partner. We have 9 of those that you just listed off. And one of the key requirements in order for them to qualify as a trusted partner is that they must be doing effective gospel-centered work. So we say that the church doesn't give, and I mean the capital C church doesn't give to us, but they give through us. So over 50% or nearly 50% of our income in 2025 went back out to help serve frontline organizations that we are partnered with or for direct survivor advocacy support. Like when we get a phone call from law enforcement and says, "Hey, we just did a sting operation. We've got 3 survivors that need hotel rooms for the night until we can figure out where we can place them in a residential care facility." And so nearly 50% of our budget last year went towards those direct survivor support services and also to our trusted partners. All 9 of them are working in Houston, but 6 of them are actually working far beyond Houston and even in other states. Some of them are even
Right.
working at a national level.
Yeah, I know like Rescue America is basically a pretty much a worldwide hotline now, isn't it?
It's a national
Are they
hotline.
national? Okay.
Yes, it's a national hotline. Joseph Project is also one of our national organizations. They provide legal aid services specifically for survivors of human trafficking, and they have pro bono attorneys that are lined up in multiple states across the United States.
Wow. And that's interesting because I was looking at the different organizations. I recognize some of them. Some of them I kind of had to look up and look, but you've got
Mhm.
some of these like Scarlet Hope and Elijah Risen, which these are organizations that are literally going out and doing direct outreach, trying to help people get out of the life. You've got other groups that are like hotlines, like we talked about with Rescue America. And then you've got other organizations here, Refuge for Women, Redeem, some of these organizations that are aimed at helping house them, educate them, feed them, and give them career training, things that they need in order to survive outside of the lifestyle. So this organization pretty much supports all of the different steps that are involved in fighting the human trafficking battle. And from what you say, including talking to law enforcement, to education in the schools. So getting involved in the front end before it even happens too. So that's really powerful. And that's an awesome testament that this organization can give of what it's doing out there to be a part of solving the entire problem, not just necessarily picking and choosing one section. So tell me, do you guys, how many people, I guess, work for and or volunteer for the organization in general?
We have a really lean staff. I am the only full-time staff member. And
Okay.
then we have 2 part-time staff members. We have our outreach director, Stacy Grigg. And then we have Lauren, who is our communications manager, but she does so much more than communications. She's a survivor leader voice as well. And she really helps speak into that survivor perspective for us. And that's very valuable. So it's really the 3 of us. And then our founder and president, Lee Kohler, she is not like officially on staff per se. She's our mighty warrior volunteer. She loves to advocate for the work that we do, and she's very good at that. She's wonderful for speaking engagements and all sorts of leadership involved, but she is very much a volunteer for us, which we're grateful for. She allows that because she chooses to do that. It gives us the ability to be more generous. And so it's really just the 4 of us. And then as far as volunteers, so, like I said, we are predominantly equipping the church to go out and then serve with all of our trusted partners. But we do have a couple ways that we have people volunteering with us directly. One is our GoBag project. So about 10 years ago, the FBI had come to us and said, when we go out and do a sting or a raid, the byproduct or the fallout of that, if you will, is that we have all these survivors that are just standing here scared and they have nowhere, they don't know what to do. And so we would really love to kind of extend just like that warm invitation, hospitality to let them know that like we see you. We can get you help if you want it. Try to, build some trust there. And so
Right.
they were like, we need just some supplies, something. A lot of times they need a change of clothing. They need some toiletries to get them through the night or a couple of days. And so that is where the Go Bags came from. And so it's a respite care bag, if you will, that's filled with very specific items. And so we have it's a drawstring bag that we print the list on the bag to make it easy for our church partners when they say, hey, we have our women's ministry, would love to like put together 30 Go Bags or 50 Go Bags, or our men's ministry, whoever, or the whole church. And so the list is on the bag. We have women's bags, kids' bags, and men's bags. All of the items on the list have been vetted and approved, not only by like a survivor voice to say, hey, this is what would mean a lot to me if I were to receive a bag in my situation that I was in, but also they're vetted by law enforcement and a lot of the emergency type placement places that would say, we can't allow, for instance, fingernail clippers in the bag because it could be harmful and
Right.
not used in the proper way. So all of those items have been very thought through. The churches get their volunteers together and they fill the bag with the contents on the list through their own donations of bringing people together to do that. So that's one way that churches volunteer and serve with us. And then the other way, which is pretty new, just started last year in partnership with Scarlet Hope, we now are the digital outreach hub for Houston. So, in partnership with them, we have a digital outreach platform that we use that we text potential victims of human trafficking. So it scrapes data, it's specific to Houston, and we have texting conversations. We have our volunteers, we train them. We background check them, we equip
Right.
them, get them all ready to go. And then once a month, we get together as volunteers and we send out a text message to these women and just say something like, hey, I'm with a group of women. We like to encourage or pray for other women. How can I pray for you today?
Gotcha.
And we get, it depends on the day, but somewhere between like a 20 to 30% response rate on that. And it gives us the opportunity to open up conversations with these women and to offer them support services. So we have a whole list of support services that we have our database with, and some of them are our trusted partners. Some of them are other organizations or hospitals or whatever that might be on that list. And we help connect them to the resources that they're in need of. And then those texting conversations can actually continue through that volunteer and the survivor. If the volunteer says, hey, I don't think I'm going to be available this week, we can, that we can hand that conversation off to another volunteer who's willing to take that conversation on so that we don't lose
Gotcha.
contact with that woman. So that's just, we've loved having the opportunity to connect with those ladies and be just a resource. And we've gotten some really incredible responses back from some. One of the ones that stood out the most to us was the woman responded back and she said, you want to pray for me, not pay for me. I mean, it was
Wow.
like, wow, it was a pin drop. You could have heard a pin drop in the room when our volunteer was like, oh my goodness, you're not going to believe this response that I just got.
Wow.
So she was surprised that somebody would stop in their day and want to offer to pray for her because she was so used to being a transactional relationship with someone.
Wow.
So it's been a really incredible way to serve and get people involved. So we are doing that. People can volunteer with us. You have to be female to do it because we are reaching out to female survivors. And so that is our requirement. But yeah, if anybody's interested in doing that, they can reach out to us.
Okay. And if somebody wants to get involved either as a volunteer or just giving opportunities or anything with your organization specifically, what's the easiest way for them to get in touch with you guys?
Well, we have on our website, like most do, just, contact us at, and then when that email comes through, I actually get that email in my inbox. Also, you can go onto our staff page. Like I said, we're a lean staff, so all of our pictures are attached to, like, you can click and email us. I believe it gives our email addresses. That's another way. And then also we have social media. So people have direct messaged us through social media if they prefer that. In fact, our Instagram, we and Facebook, we keep updated pretty frequently with opportunities for people to serve, not just with us, but also with our trusted partners. When we learn of needs that they have, we do post those on our social media account too, if people want to contact us in that way.
Wow. Okay. So if people want to reach out to you, step one would be go to the website, which is freedomchurchalliance.org, correct?
Correct.
And then from there, they can either phone or send emails or get in touch. Do you guys do any kind of like fundraisers or anything like that specifically, or is it mainly relying on donations and or volunteered time?
So, we as an organization have never hosted a gala or a fundraiser for ourselves, primarily because we are supporting our trusted partners and we have felt like we did not want to compete with their fundraisers and galas. I'm not saying we won't ever do that, but as of right now, we haven't because we've relied so heavily on literally what our mission statement is uniting the church. So, we really have asked our churches to be willing, when you're giving, like again, former missions pastor role,
Mhm.
one of the things that our elder board and our missions committee thought was so wonderful was that when we are giving to Freedom Church Alliance, we were giving to the whole spectrum of fighting human trafficking because it was
Right.
going to go back out to all those trusted partners. So we really rely heavily on the church to invest in that. And it takes that load off of them to not have to worry about all the vetting and the organization of which organization's doing what because they can entrust that to us. And then just also, like I would say, pretty much we're split 50-50 between individual donors and the church, capital C church giving. But yeah, we haven't done any fundraisers.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking a little time to talk with us and tell us about Freedom Church Alliance. Before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to tell us about the Freedom Church Alliance that I didn't think to ask you about?
You covered a lot. The only thing I would say is that if you are somebody listening to this and your church isn't partnered with us in our alliance, is I would encourage your church to take that into prayerful consideration because we have every quarter what's called a church council meeting. And that's where we bring in church leaders from all 35 of our church partners. It's a really valuable time. We try to make the most impact. We're together for about 2 hours. We feed everybody lunch and we bring in at least one of our trusted partners, or we will bring in somebody from law enforcement, somebody that's in the anti-trafficking space, and we give them anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes to speak on a specific topic to help, bring education and awareness and update of what's going on in Houston. We also provide our own updates during that time. And then at the end of that meeting, we take time to pray for our city and anti-trafficking organizations that are serving in this fight. But we also take time to collaborate. So it's really, I can say from my former role as a missions pastor that it's super helpful when you're in a room full of other church leaders and you're hearing ideas that they're doing in their church. And you're like, that's a really great idea. That would work well in my congregation too. And so it's that collaboration and drawing from each other's ideas that's really helpful. So that alliance time as a church council is very valuable. So I would encourage churches, if they're not part of the alliance, to reach out to me. And I would love to come and have a conversation with you, your elders, your missions council, whoever it may be that would make that kind of a decision. I can email you information about it as well.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much again for taking time to share all this information with us. Again, this has been Krista Freihoff, the Executive Director at Freedom Church Alliance, and myself, Paul Cannon, Managing Partner over at Simmons and Fletcher. And if anybody else would like an opportunity to be heard, if you're out doing missions work, as long as it is work in the done at least in part here in the Houston area or based here, so there's opportunities for locals to get involved and volunteer, then I'd like to hear from you. Please send me an email at pcannon@simmonsandfletcher.com or give us a call at the firm and let's get something set up. Thank you so much again for your time, Krista.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.